professor of Islamic law and theology at the University of California, Berkeley. He's also lecturer for different diaspora studies as well. Hatem, thanks so much for coming in on the show. What could this mean for the occupied territories, as Naftali Bennett is politically very similar to Netanyahu?
Indeed, I think Naftali Bennett will continue to push for greater settlement policies, hard right-wing policies relative to the Palestinians. Definitely will continue an assault on Gaza in various ways with the siege and possibly continuing to use military force. I think if there was any hope that the U.S. Secretary of State visit to Israel might alter the direction of the Israeli political landscape, I think with Naftali Bennett and his forming of a new government, that should be put to an end. If anything, I think it will crystallize Israel's shift to the extreme right. He's beholden to the settlement blocs and the various settlement activists. And I think increasingly we need to just begin to speak of Israel as an apartheid state, with Naftali Bennett again cementing this with his policies to come. Mind you that he also have called the Palestinian citizens of Israel as fifth column and wanted to target them before. So not only that you're dealing with the occupied territories, but also he has been antagonistic in his approach and his engagement with almost 25% of the citizens of Israel that are of Palestinian background.
Netanyahu says a Lapid Bennett government will weaken Israel. I mean, is he right? Bennett and Lapid don't seem to be ideologically lined up. In fact, Bennett is more closely politically lined up with Netanyahu, as you were just saying.
I think Netanyahu is actually still trying to rescue his own political career, but more importantly, he's facing corruption charges. And the only way that he could delay going to prison is by continuing to serve as a prime minister, where he would get the immunity for his position as being prime minister. So I'm not surprised that he would attack the possible forming of a government that both have Naftali Bennett and then the centrist party would be something that is a threat to him. I think Netanyahu is still attempting to play his last card, politically speaking, calling the new government being anti-Zionist, which is funny that maybe he will join our camp that continues to be critical of Zionism. And now we have the outgoing possible Israeli prime minister calling the incoming government under Naftali Bennett as being an anti-Zionist government. Again, I think Netanyahu in here is specifically attempting to rescue his political fortunes and trying to point that this would be seen as a weakness from Iran and will be seen by weakness in relations to the Gaza Strip and Hamas. Again, I expect this from Netanyahu, and I don't think Netanyahu is going to exit stage left without putting a fight, because if he is not in the prime minister, he'll end up in jail for sure.
Right, and many are expecting from him exactly that, to fight until the end. Wednesday is the deadline for Lapid's party to form a coalition. If that actually happened and we have this new government, new era in Israel, as I can see, this new coalition is made of different parties. They have different stances, not just on the Palestine issue, but other issues too. So how fragile will be this new government in Israel?
I think there are a number of issues: economics, the social welfare state, how to reignite the economy, especially after the most recent cycle with violence with the Palestinians. But on the question of the Palestinians, I don't think there is fundamental difference that we're going to see between a Netanyahu government and a Naftali government. So on that side, I don't think you're going to see any substantial movement. I think you're going to see substantial possible changes in terms of budget allocations. We're going to see a different package for social welfare? Are we going to see different type of expenditures from the government? I think you're going to see that domestic aspect to this new government that is going to be almost divvying up the budget pie between the various participants in this government. Now, the Israeli political landscape has been fragmented. We've been talking about 4 different elections in a span of 2 years without any decisive political majority emerging. And lastly, also one has to speak that one big factor that we are not actually addressing is there's actually a number of Palestinians who were elected to the Knesset, and in essence, nobody wants to actually include them in the government, which points to that Palestinians are in essence included by means of exclusion in the political landscape in Israel, which again cements the whole apartheid, that you have a different notion, different relations pertaining to Palestinians in 48, as well as Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
Professor Hatem Bazian, thanks so much for that. He's a professor of Islamic law and theology at University of California. I appreciate your insight for us here at TRT World.